this series is hopefully the same idea, but I hope it goes a little deeper than the stars in the sky, and I hope it goes into your heart. We're talking about an algorithm here. Algorithms are built for our computer generation to develop step-by-step processes to get you to solve a problem. Well, Jesus did the same thing. He gave you step-by-step process. What's fascinating to me, though, is within, as we've discussed in previous weeks, we were raised in a knowledge-based culture, not a wisdom-based culture, which is to say that we didn't take our knowledge into a place of understanding and then practice it to a point of righteousness where there's wisdom. Wisdom is really that application of truth. It's not just knowing it that matters within Jesus' framework. It's about what you do with it. If it is simply this issue of a knowledge-based system, then it is sorely lacking, and Jesus would be totally fed up with you. And it's because of the way we're often taught it. You know, I'm trying to basically teach you something because you need to know it to do it, but it's amazing that you can actually know it and not do it. But you can't do it without knowing it. And that's what Jesus did. In fact, one of his famous sermons, his most complete sermon of your identity, who a follower of Jesus is, what they look like, is called the Sermon on the Mount. And in that, he teaches you, what does it mean to follow? Now, obviously, as Jesus lived on this planet, he walked with us. He showed us a living example. He modeled it. But I wonder how many Christians, and as I meet, and the blessing we have as a church is that we know that you come from diverse backgrounds, diverse religious backgrounds, non-religious backgrounds. And so I hear through all these years, I've heard just different ways that people have been taught Jesus. And I just begin to realize that, how were you taught Jesus? And the truth is, were you actually taught Jesus? Were you taught to solve the problems that face every one of us every day of your life? It's important to understand the meaning and the impact of what Jesus taught. And so that's why with the Sermon on the Mount, I want to read a section at the end, sort of how Jesus closes this. And it's fascinating to me too, because this is like one of the pivotal teachings of Jesus. He gathers the audience, thousands of people. He preaches into them this truth, this fascinating new way of living. He fulfills the law, but then he breaks into his new commandments, and he begins to tell you how to live life to such a degree that as he concludes his teaching, people are sort of in awe of him. And this is the statement that's made by Jesus at the very end of this greatest sermon ever preached. He says, therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain came down, the streams rose, the winds blew and beat against that house, yet it did not fall, because it had its foundation on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on sand, and the rain came down, and the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell with a great crash. And then, when Jesus had finished saying these things, the crowds were amazed at his teaching, because he taught as one who had authority, not as their teachers of the law. He did not teach them that this is truth that you must abide by. He taught that this is what you have to do. He didn't ask you to love one another. He told you to love one another. Because he's the author. He's the authority. He's the one that drives our life. But the question in this incredible, beautiful little parable he says at the end is, what have you built your life on? Because he knew within that audience of thousands of people, there were people there that just wanted their ears tickled. They wanted to hear the fascinating new guy in town. They wanted to go to the latest experience of religion. He knew that there were many of them absorbed within their legalistic systems or within their Pharisaical systems, Sadduceical systems. There were Romans probably listening in on this. And the question comes to us even today. What do you build your life on? You know, one of the biggest issues hitting our culture right now is people choosing their identity. Like, who am I going to be? It's a big issue within adults, children, youth, and everybody out there screams, be this, be that. This is the ultimate identity to have. Didn't you get the memo that when you come to Jesus, Jesus is your identity? Did he not teach it clearly enough? Or is it that we didn't really listen? Do you remember we talked about this a few weeks ago? It's like he would come in and he'd say, listen. And I love the one where he comes in and he says, listen. Why? Because we have a problem what? So listen. And then he goes on and he would say this. He'd say, and try to understand. Because he knew this is going to fly over some of your heads. I want you to try and understand. Jesus teaches us that it is extremely important to carefully select the foundation you build your life on. If you build your life on hedonism and pleasure and seeking pleasure, it is like sand. If you build your life on a natural system and not the supernatural as well, it is like building on sand. He realized that what you choose to put your identity in mattered eternally to your soul. And he would say, be very careful about what you seek to put your identity in. J.I. Packer, a few weeks ago, we were speaking about the power of meditation, Christian meditation, and how it's sort of a lost art form of practice. And yet it is essential to understanding and gaining wisdom in your life. And J.I. Packer, as he was reviewing a book, he wrote this. He says, the Christian's inner life is found in the discipline of meditation. The deployment within one's own mind of key lines of thought that will confirm and reinforce our communion with God. Setting out the best lines of thought. It's almost like when you meditate, you begin to think the thoughts of Jesus as you begin to chew on them. You begin to memorize, yes, but memorization is just the beginning of it. You begin to chew on wisdom, and you begin to chew on your heart, and you begin to chew on your head, and you begin to realize how much of me is really identified within this text. Is this who I have become, and is this who I am? What is the line of thinking you have? Why do you get so angry? Why do you get so depressed? Why are you so anxious? Remember that one quote we used a couple weeks ago, the biggest evil that faces society is the lack of ability to fold your hands and be alone with yourself for 5 minutes. You see, in this section, I want to show you how parables are an incredible tool Jesus used to reach the heart, not just the head. And the first point you see in the text here is that there are two foundations you can build your life on: the rock or sand. These are the concluding thoughts of Jesus, the challenge of the parable to us. In fact, notice he says, therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain came down, the streams rose up, the winds blew and beat against that house, yet it did not fall because it had its foundation on the rock. It's kind of what I like about where we live. Basically, if you live in this town, you're just on a giant rock. Even when the earthquakes hit, we don't feel them as bad, etc., because it's a rock. If you've ever tried to dig anything in your backyard or whatever, it's not too far till you hit rock. And it's what I want my house built on. It's not what I want to do with my garden, but it is what I want my house built on. And notice he says it's like this. It's likened unto this. The rock. And of course, when Jesus was later speaking to his disciples, it was the issue of who is the rock? Well, the rock was those who would trust in Jesus, because Jesus is the rock. The rock will give our lives stability and security. Actually, better yet, is your life stable and secure? When life is hard, you have a place to run to when you build it on a rock. You have a place to go. You see, the sand, it shifts under your feet. And I like sand. I like the beach, but I wouldn't build my house on the sand. Why? Because it shifts. It creates instability. It creates doubts and fears. So again, back to the question, what are you building your life on? And you can reflect on your soul very easily and say, how do I feel? Well, great. How do you feel? Do you feel secure, confident? When you stand on a rock of life and you build your house on that, you are confident. Why? Because you know you'll survive the storm. So, what are you building your life on? Are your habits creating strength and security or doubts and fears? It's a great measuring stick for your soul. But then he goes on, and as he's explaining this parable, you discover there are two builders of the house that is built on these foundations. And the two builders are the wise and the foolish. Now, what's interesting is many fools are very smart. As we've discussed previously, because a foolish man knows the right thing to do and chooses not to do it. It's not that they don't know, it's that they don't do it. And by the way, if you're going to be a Christian, let me just get this out right now. We have all been fools. I have done things that I knew I shouldn't have done it, and I did it anyways. And you don't even need to raise your hand because you're all in the same boat as I am. We've all done something foolish. So we can relate to the principle of a fool. And some of you will say, yeah, I spent years in that boat. It's a wrestling, it's a struggle. Notice how he says the second part. He says, but everyone who hears these words of mine and they do not put them into practice, that's a foolish man who built his house on the sand. The rain came down, the streams rose, the wind blew and beat against the house, and it fell with a great crash. So when Jesus adds that little adjective, great crash, he means, man, they destroyed their lives. They utterly destroyed their lives. Have you ever met someone who's destroyed their life? Have you ever been that person that was so close to the edge that you could see yourself destroying your own life? Are you sinking? I find in our culture, a lot of times, Christians included, they have this air about them where their attitude is like, you're sinking. You're sinking in sand. You're not believing on the rock because I see your soul being shifted and I see the wrestling and the uncertainties. I see the struggle. And that tells me that you're putting your identity and your trust in something that should not be there. The sand answers is sort of speaks to that shifting, uncertain feelings you have. Some people only know that ground. Some people have been raised on shifting soil. They don't know if anything's even true. They love the love of praise, but that's for the approvals of others. They love the culture, to respect the culture, to go with whatever trend, whatever they tell you to believe, I'll believe. Because everybody does it, I'll do it, and the like. And the dramatic touch is your house will fall with a great noise. Herbert Lockyer, who is actually a very astute man who wrote a book, one of the few who wrote a book on parables. And he writes this, he says, the virtues of sand have no strength or root, no goodness or motive, and even hope has no ground. That is to say, you can't really do much on sand. You can't really take root. You can't find stability in it. And yet people keep searching. Have you ever met someone, have you ever been that person where you thought, this is supposed to make me happy. This is supposed to make me happy. And you realize, ouch, I'm not happy. I got hurt. And then you double down. You go deeper into it. I'm even more not happy now. But it's supposed to make me happy. Have you ever been that person, right? Where you were taught something like, this is what I was taught. This is supposed to make me happy. And you just become more and more miserable. Because sand, by nature, is not going to give you the goodness you're looking for, the happiness you're looking for. Notice, though, here what tests a person's life in the parable is the same, whether it's built on the rock or the sand. Did you catch that? Either person is hit by the rain. Either person, the streams rise up to flood. Either person, the wind comes at the house and beats against it. Which is to tell me this: all of us encounter the struggles of life. Christian, non-Christian, no matter what your religion, no matter what your thought life, no matter who you are on this planet, we will all encounter the flood. And because you follow Jesus, this does not make you immune to life's difficulties or sufferings. I think somehow we had this memo like, if I come to Jesus, life will be without suffering. Well, that's a lie. I don't know who taught that or ingrained us. It's like the real teachings of Jesus is all humanity groans under the weight of sin and struggle and the tensions of this world. All of us. Because you follow Jesus does not make you immune to life's difficulties or sufferings. But here's what it does that I love. It makes you resilient, strong, and stable. How can you tell you're growing in your faith in the right way? Life will hit you, and as life is hitting you, you become more resilient. You become more strong and stable. Because in heaven, the only people that make it to heaven are what he calls overcomers. Which means what? You had to get through something. You know, when I first had children, I was like, I wanted to protect them from all of life's whatever. And it's like, that's a lie. I want to teach them how to build on a rock. I want to teach them how to build their character and their moral values on a rock. A rock that no matter what hits you in life, because I can't tell you what's going to hit you. No matter what hits you, you're able to be resilient and stand through the storm. You're not immune as a Christian. And then people will say, why do those bad things happen to good people? Bad things happen to everybody. It's called the suffering of the world. It's called the effects of the sin in the world. It's everybody. The issue isn't whether you will engage in difficulty or suffer something. The issue is, as a Christian, do you have the right algorithm in your head, and are you practicing the right skill set to build a house on a rock and not the sand? And I actually find out more about your faith as you go through difficulty than I do if you're just having a good time. Why? Because it tells me how you practice life. If people practice life and they say they're a Christian but they don't go to church, that tells me how they practice life. If people practice life by saying they're a Christian but they don't pray, that tells me how you practice life. If people say they practice life and that they're a Christian but they don't love their neighbor, that tells me how you practice your life. And what I tell you is that so many of us have put our house on the sand. And that's why you feel the way you do sometimes. Go back to that rock. Don't forget the rock. And what was wonderful about this closing parable of Jesus is he was reflecting on the whole sermon. He was reflecting on the whole sermon. You read that sermon and you practice that sermon. If you practice what he's saying in there, it will revolutionize your life, but it will bring into your life some forms of difficulty you have never known. Because when you actually have to love your neighbor, but how about this one? When you actually have to love your enemy, it confronts your soul. That's why by the time he was done, the audience said this. When Jesus had finished saying these things, the crowds, they were amazed. Our teachers, they teach us things, but they don't tell us how to do it. They don't tell us to do it. They don't give us the option out. That's what Jesus was about. Like if he's standing here today, he'd say, this is not like optional practices for you. This is your job description, your duty, your responsibility, if you want to live life stable. If you take what I say and you go out and you just think, wow, that was great, and you do nothing with it, then nothing will come but a foolish house built on sand. And so when the house crashes, don't be surprised. And you know what? The fool's not surprised. You know this. You've done stuff that's foolish. You knew it wasn't the right thing to do, and you did it. And then your house crashed down, and all of a sudden you realize, right, who's to blame? God? No. You seeded the soil. You planted it in sand. So they were amazed at this. But what's fascinating about their amazement is Jesus wasn't impressed. I love him. He's such the rock. Regardless of whether people were leaving him or coming to him, he was the rock. So Jesus does not suggest a better life for you. He does not suggest a better life. He tells us what a better life is, and he shows us how to live it. It's amazing how in our natural condition we get this, but in the supernatural we ignore it as though it doesn't have the same practical application. As though the message I spoke last week about how he uses these outside principles to show an inside spiritual world. And it's amazing to me how we don't connect those dots. It'd be like me sitting here saying, you know, everybody tells me I should lose weight or stay healthy. You know, yeah, that's a nice thought. I don't do that. They're way too forceful. You guys are way too, why should I believe? That's good for you. That's good for you. You know, we're in this society of you be the best you. What if I don't want to be the exercising you or the healthy you? I want to be the lazy, fat, sit around the house you. Is that okay? We could do that here, right? I want to be I don't care about my neighbor you. We do that, don't we? But yet the society and anybody with a sound head will say that's not healthy. So that when somebody dies from I smoke 6 packs of cigarettes a day and now I got lung cancer, surprise? They told me not to do that. I didn't listen. Why? Because I don't care. I want to do this. We do the same thing with Jesus' teaching in the Sermon on the Mount. I want to get angry and say bad things to somebody. Jesus, I know you told me not to. In fact, I know you told me to stop it in the heart before it ever gets out of my mouth. But you know what? They deserve it. I know you told me to pray this way, but if I pray this way, man, there's a lot of reliance on you, and that means I have to trust you versus what? Trusting my bank account, or trusting my relationship, or trusting my abilities, or trusting my looks, or trusting this or that or the other thing. Fill in the blank. We create pathways of thinking that aren't Jesus. And nobody confronts that. Like, if you're a Christian, you need to start thinking like one. And on top of that, not just thinking about it, you need to then start living it. So it's almost like, do you meditate on Scripture? What are you meditating on right now? And how is that transformation occurring in such a way that you're practicing it tomorrow? Tomorrow morning, you're going to get up and practice this virtue. And how do you even do that? The disciplines of the faith. But that's work. That means I have to actually do something. Listen, you do stuff every day to please yourself. The things of Jesus are better for you. You want to live without anxiety? Well, start thinking without it. Start memorizing the verses, putting them into your heads. At least let Jesus have an opportunity to start cleaning a house. You know, I tried that. I read the Bible. Did you meditate on it? Did you chew on it? Did you absorb it? Are you reliant every morning fully on Jesus for how you live your day? Or is Jesus sort of the religious option? Jesus doesn't suggest a better life, guys. He tells you what it looks like. He tells you what you have to do to live it, and he tells you what the outcome of it is. The issue is, we don't want to hear it. And people come at me like, so why is my life such a wreck or this or that? And I read that truth and I explain it to them and they're like, yeah. And then they walk away and what do? Well, I don't know. It depends on whether you are wise or a fool. And that's what Jesus was getting at with the audience. There were fools in the audience, trust me. And there were some wise people. And I would encourage us as a church that we need to be wise when we consider the foundation of our life. You need to be careful and give careful thought to what you allow into your life and what you allow out of your mouth and what you allow out of your life. And what you're practicing every day you get up in the morning, what is it you're doing with your life? How do you speak to others? How do you love others? What is the step-by-step procedure that would be Jesus' algorithm for life? The Christian life begins when we establish it on Jesus as the foundation. Remember when we went through James not too long ago? Faith without works is, how can you say you follow my teaching if you don't follow my teaching? But I believe it. No, you don't. In your head, you've been deceived to think believe it means knowing it. No, believe it means knowing it and doing it. And if you're honest with yourself and you read Scripture and you read the Sermon on the Mount, you're going to be confronted in your soul somewhere and you're going to realize, wow, I know that. I don't practice that. Which means what? I've got to work on my belief. I've got to work on my belief. Listen, if you say you're a Christian but you're a gossip, those two don't fit. You need to work on it. You say you're a Christian, but you just, moan about your neighbor. You don't love your neighbor. You moan about your enemies. You don't love your enemies. Those two don't fit. Well, yeah, that's your interpretation. No, that means you were taught wrong. What Jesus were you taught? Because I thought he was very clear. And even though he got into parables and there was wisdom literature, and even though we are raised in academic literature and not wisdom literature, which means most people raised in academia, when they read the parables, at first they don't get it. Why? Because parables are created to strike your head and grip your heart. And they're created to make you chew on it and think on it, because wisdom is something you search for like a pearl of great price, like a treasure you must dig to find. It wasn't meant to be me getting up here preaching to you and all the dots connect, I got it, I'm good to go. No, it was meant to be you walk out the door chewing on it because it is ripped into your heart somehow. It's confronted you. Have you built your house on a rock or on sand? And if it's on sand and you're unsettled, you will crash. That grips. After that message he gave, he ends it with that. I'm like, wow, that's why they were amazed. I would be that way. I'd be like, wow, okay, what did he say? I need to do some of this. This is obviously, oh, yeah, the hand, chop it off, the eye, poke it out. Oh, I get it. It makes you think. It makes you chew on it and get excited about it and go, wow, that makes so much sense now. Wow. Ouch. And then somewhere it hits, right? Somewhere it's like, oh, yeah, that hits. Yeah, I'm not that. I wasn't raised in that. I don't think that. I don't even do that. That's when you know you're being wise, because you actually begin to work on you through the Word of God. It's exciting to be a Christian. Yes, challenging to be a Christian. Yes, you're hit with all the same storms. Yes. But don't think, why am I hit with one thing and another person? Everybody gets hit with something. And yes, some people seem to have the easy life and some people seem to have very hard lives. I get it. But I promise you this, the wind will blow, the flood will rise, everybody's going to hit the rain of some kind. Because we all walk on this planet together. And we all need to realize that we have choices. And your choices, you can go back and read the Sermon on the Mount, chapter 5 through 7 of Matthew. Take notes, though. Dig deeper. Don't take it superficially. There are some tweaks in that sermon that are incredible. What Jesus did was incredible. You have heard it was said this, but I tell you this. You have heard it was said this, but I tell you this. He shows you the very heart of God. And then you have to walk away and do what he says at the end, which is what? Do it. Have the heart of God when you love others. Start with the heart. I love being a Christian. I was about to say it's sort of a love-hate relationship. I love it because it is true and it is a rock and it has made me go through so many storms and things and has given me a stability and a resilience I could have never had in any other faith on this planet. But I wrestle with it because you know what? I don't always live to the value it is. And I realize, God, that gripped my heart. But you know, the beauty of our faith is this. God doesn't expect you to always live to the standard. That's why Jesus came. If you feel like you blow it too much, then what that tells me is probably you didn't learn the power of confession, forgiveness, and restoration. That tool alone you can use pretty much every day or every other day. And you learn in the process of actually doing it how much God really loves you. How much he really shows you grace. It's like the moment you woke up and realized, I have a problem with that. And you feel like it's this aha moment, like, wow, I have a problem with that. And all of a sudden it hits you in the back of your head if you're wise enough and think, I've always had a problem with that. It's just I got it now. Between I got it and those years is God's grace. He still loves you. He still picks you up, cleans you off. Because of Jesus. Because of Jesus' sacrifice for you, he loves you. Unconditionally, he loves you. But listen to Jesus' words. He loves you, he will pick you up, he'll love you again, but here's the issue. Do what I tell you to do. Take it serious. If you took a principle out of the Sermon on the Mount and practiced it 10 days in a row, how could that change your life? You know? The Christian life is well worth it. Yes, eternally worth it. Forever worth it. It is wisdom. It is the beauty of heaven above. It's the very nature of the Lord's Prayer. That was in by the sermon. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And if you don't have a clue what's in heaven, you won't even have a clue how to do it on earth. And he gives it to you. So when you build your foundation, when you look at your life, I hope you walk away reflecting. Reflecting on, how's my soul? Am I secure in Jesus? Am I working on those things? Am I taking my faith seriously? Am I wanting to identify my whole life with Jesus? And ask those questions honestly. Because anybody that tells you, oh, come to Jesus, it's a feel-good religion, is lying to you. Will you feel good? Yeah. But you'll also feel a whole lot of other emotions. Because he's going to make you his child. And he loves you way too much than to allow you to continue bad habits. So as we go from here, I want to encourage you to plug more into the church. Love the church more. Love the neighbors more. But learn what that love is. And so the take home is really read the whole Sermon on the Mount. And ask yourself, what's the next step I need to take to live it? And you will be building your house on the rock because you will be showing great wisdom. Let's pray.